This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2. It's episode 55. The Cubs club the Cardinals. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, and of course, follow us on Facebook as well. You can also email us, flythew670@gmail.com. Crawly, happy Monday, and it is a happy one.
What a weekend. The Cubs take 3 of 4 from the Cardinals. I went down to the Iowa Cubs game and saw a walk-off home run. I am on cloud nine right now, Dustin.
All right, well, let's start with that, Crawly. Tell me about the walk-off home run. Who hit it? What was the situation?
Yeah, Cubs down by 1 run in the 9th inning, 2 outs. Edwin Rios hits a 450-foot bomb to about left center. So the place went nuts. I jumped down the dugout. It was crazy.
Nice, very cool. And the Iowa Cubs are still doing good, right? Hayden Wisniewski just had a nice start out there for them.
Yeah, I got to see Hayden. The slider looked nasty. I'm excited.
All right, well, enough about the Iowa Cubs. Let's talk about the big Cubs, the Cubs with the big C, because the dreaded Cardinals were in town, and game number 1 was all the way back on Thursday night. Marcus Stroman on the bump.
Marcus Stroman versus Steven Matz. You and I both agreed this was the one that the Cubs easily should have taken on paper, and the Cubs lose 7-2. So that ended up being their only loss. The game was bad in every single aspect, Dustin. Pitching, hitting, defense, all bad. Stroman struggled and definitely was not helped by his defense. Cardinals scored first when Wilson Contreras, who else, right, singled and scored Paul Goldschmidt. Now, the run was unearned because of the first of 2 fielding errors by Patrick Wisdom. But Wilson is hitting .364, 8 for 22 in 6 games against the Cubs. So, okay, you're down 1-0, no big deal, but the wheels fell completely off in the top of the 4th. Stroman's going to give up a 2-run blast to Jordan Walker, and later in the inning, Nolan Arenado's going to hit a 2-run double, and the Cubs were down 5-0. David Ross had seen enough, and Stroman's night was over. Michael Rooker came in to finish the inning, but when he came back out in the 5th, he gave up a 2-run homer to Paul DeJong. Back to Stroman, though. He went 3.2 innings pitched, gave up 7 hits, 5 runs, 4 of them earned. He walked 4 and struck out 4. So it was his 3rd shortest start of the season. And his 7 hits allowed were the 2nd most of 2023. So Stro right now is 0-3 with a 6.23 ERA and 3 starts this season against the Cardinals. I know how much you love that. But
that's not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. The 4 walks bothers me. Not being mentally tough enough to handle the errors behind you bothers me. So that this was the most disappointing Stroman start of the year.
Yeah, Dustin, he had a streak of 7 quality starts in a row. He has he's only posted 1 out of his last 5 starts. Should the Cubs be hitting the panic button when it comes to Stro, Dustin?
I don't know that they should be hitting the panic button, but this is, again, going back to what I said all season long. This is why they thankfully did not back up the truck and pay this guy during the season. You need to see how he does over the course of hopefully, 25 to 30 starts. He's been really, really good. Of course he has been, but I'm not paying a guy on the other side of 30, $100 million. Just not doing it right now. So, if the Cubs are sitting real close to 500 after this White Sox series, maybe you don't move him. Maybe you're buying another pitcher. But right now, I don't know if anybody's going to give you quite what you thought you were going to get from Marcus Stroman after these last couple starts.
I think the blister kind of affected 2 of those starts. He did really good against Boston, which Boston's been on fire lately. I still think he brings you a return. It's just a question if the Cubs want to extend him or trade him at this point.
Right. Well, again, if you don't want him back next year, then I think you should trade him. If you want him back next year and you want to take a run at this Central Division, then you keep him. But you can't not trade him and then not offer him something in the offseason. So that's the tricky part of this whole thing.
Now, the offense was just as bad. Coming into Thursday, Dustin, there had been 142 MLB pitchers to make at least 10 starts this season, and only 2 of them failed to have 1 victory. One of them was the Cardinals lefty Steven Matz, who hadn't recorded a win in nearly a year, and he goes ahead and dominates the Cubs. 5 innings pitched, gave up 1 run on 3 hits with 1 walk and 6 Ks. The Cubs only scored 2 runs on 6 hits, leaving 9 men on base. going 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. The only offense really came from Yan Gomes, who scored the Cubs' first run by hitting an RBI triple in the 4th. And then he hits another triple in the bottom of the 7th. Now, again, Jordan Walker, the prized rookie of the Cardinals, he can really hit, but the defense leaves a lot to be desired. So he was a little bit assisting on some of those. But you take a look at it, Gomes is going to score on the Christopher Morel ground out. So Gomes was 3 for 4 with an RBI and a run scored. He is the 3rd oldest catcher at 36 years old in one day since 1901 with 2 triples in a game. Hat tip to the great Sarah Langs on that one.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was the only highlight of the night, Yan Gomes with the 2 triples. They seemed tired. They seemed not enthused, uninspired. And that's just a bad way to handle a rival anytime. That really was disappointing.
Right. Well, game 2, once we get to game 2 and game 3, then we start talking about traditional wild and crazy Cubs-Cardinals games that we are used to. This one was a nail biter. Justin Steele on the mound. The Cardinals jumped out to an early lead with 1 out. The Cardinals loaded the bases. Andrew Kinziger hit a little weak ground ball to 3rd. Miles Mastrobuoni took the out at first, and that made it 1-0. People thought he should have gone home with it. I thought he made the right call. Steele walked the next batter to load the bases, but got Dylan Carlson to ground into a double play to end the threat. It was what recent Hall of Fame announcer Pat Hughes called one of those turning point moments in the bottom of the 3rd. The Cubs tie it up on Miles Mastrobuoni's first MLB home run ever, a solo shot to tie the game.
It wasn't a cheapie either. It wasn't a cheapie, so it wasn't a basket. Good for him. About time. About damn time.
Well, let's go with this here, Dustin, because since being recalled from AAA on July 8th, Miles is batting .429 with 1 double, 1 home run, 8 runs scored, a .429 OBP, and 2 stolen bases. So he did start batting. 29 games to start the season. He was batting .145. So good to see him start to come around. And sometimes it's hard when you're not an everyday consistent player to get into a rhythm, and I'm glad that he's able to do that. You saw it with Madrigal, same thing. Struggled to start the season and then got hot before he got injured.
Or he likes that MLB meal money much better than he likes the minor league meal money.
Maybe. Now, the Cubs added some more runs in the bottom of the 3rd when Mike Tauchman, Palatine Pounder doubles to score Miguel Amaya, and we'll talk about him at the end. But Cody Bellinger homered, and the Cubs were up 4-1. Justin Steele's cruising, but in the 7th with 1 out, Jose Fermin singles, and Steele's day was done. He went 6.1 innings, gave up 6 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, and a season-high 9 strikeouts. A great quality start, and so good to see Justin Steele looking good.
He looked fantastic. I liked what you saw to him.
Yeah, he comes out, though, and then Julian Merriweather took over. He strikes out Lars Nootbaar before walking Paul Goldschmidt. Wild pitch is going to move the runners to 2nd and 3rd, and Nolan Arenado, who was on our hot list, singled to make it 4-3, but Wilson Contreras strikes out to end the threat. I don't know how bad you were chewing your nails, Dustin, but I was sweating. I thought for sure Wilson was going to come through.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I'm glad Wilson didn't. I did think he was going to do that, but fortunately he did not. And it's amazing that the rumors today are that Wilson Contreras is being shopped around by the Cardinals.
Basically, they said the 2 guys, Arenado and Goldschmidt, who we talked about last time, are not moving, and everyone else is available. So that just shows you what a disaster that signing was for the Cardinals.
Yeah, it's been rough.
They're going to have to eat a lot of money if they have any plan to get rid of Wilson Contreras. But Dustin, we do need to talk about the 8th inning. You know me, man. Look at me. If you're watching on the Scores YouTube channel, you can see I'm surrounded by Cubs memorabilia. I love the Cubs and I hate the Cardinals with every bounce of my being. But what happened in the 8th inning of this game was a joke, and MLB needs to address it, okay? Down 4-3, riding a 6-game winning streak and the Cardinals season on the line, the Cardinals load the bases with 1 out. Michael Fulmer and Mark Leiter walk the bases loaded. Cannot happen, Dustin. Cannot happen.
It's inexcusable.
With 1 out, pitch hitter Alec Burleson is up to the plate, and Mark Leiter cannot throw strikes. Now, again, if you are watching on YouTube on the 670 The Score channel, make sure to subscribe. I'm putting up the graphic that shows what happened, Leiter versus Burleson. The first 3 pitches are nowhere close to the strike zone. Okay, so he cannot throw a strike, Leiter. He walked the previous batter, and these 3 pitches are way outside and high. Then it gets to pitch number 4, the fourth pitch. The fourth pitch is slightly outside, but definitely outside. It is called a strike. That makes it 3-1, bases loaded, 1 out. The fifth pitch of this at bat is nowhere near a strike. I don't know how he missed this call. And that would make it 3-2. And then Leiter throws one even further outside. Burleson has no idea what this umpire is going to call. So he goes low and outside to get the ball, grounds into a double play. And that is going to end the threat. And the Cubs are going to win that game 4-3. But that was a run right there for the Cardinals. The game should have been tied. And am I happy that the Cubs got the benefit of the count? Yes, but if it would have gone the other way, Dustin, you and me would be flipping out right now.
That would have been the basis of the entire podcast today had it gone the other way.
In this day and age, if MLB wants to get in bed with gambling, I'm not a gambler. I had no money on the game, but if they want to get in bed with gambling and all that stuff, imagine if you had money on that game. I mean, that's wrong. I'm telling you this, Dustin. I said I was down in Iowa this weekend. They had the ABS system there in AAA. To remind our listeners, the ABA system is when either a pitcher, a catcher, or a batter can challenge a call. You have only a limited amount. I think it's 3 per game. So as long as you're right on your challenge, you retain all 3. If you're wrong, you lose 1. Okay? And it worked fine. It was awesome. They would challenge it. You have to tap your helmet immediately or tell the umpire immediately. It goes up on the screen. They show it exactly like we saw what I showed on here on the board, and you get the call right in these critical moments. That was inexcusable.
Yeah, it is, and you're right. But thankfully, it went the Cubs' way, and they were able to hang on and win this one.
Yeah, the offense scored 4 runs on 9 hits. Bellinger 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs. And Miles Mastrobuoni 2 for 3 with that solo home run, Dustin.
Now all of a sudden he's in there for his bat. I knew they needed to play him for his defense after Thursday night after Patrick Wisdom forgot how to play third base. So I expected him out there. I definitely didn't expect that homer.
Well, I'll tell you, as far as what to expect, I had no idea what to expect with Game 3. As the Cubs say, Michael Fulmer is going to start. We talked about the TBD. We were kind of like, okay, what's going on here? So the Cubs, were they going to go a bullpen game? Didn't know. So Michael Fulmer is going to start against Miles Michaelis. The Cubs win this one in a wild 8-6 game, classic Cubs Cardinals, and probably one of the signature wins of the season. So the opener strategy, Michael Fulmer comes out to start the game, and then the very first pitch, Lars Nootbaar hits a home run. Didn't look like it was going to work out.
At that point, I was totally deflated. I was totally deflated at that point. I'm like, really? After hanging on Friday, this is how we're going to start Saturday?
And it was just such a weird thing with saying Fulmer's going to start, and what are we going to expect? And the very first pitch out. That being said, Fulmer did okay. He went 2 innings. He gave up 1 run on 3 hits with 1 walk and 2 Ks. But in the third, Drew Smyly comes into the game. So, okay, why didn't he start? I don't know. Were they trying something? I don't know. But the results for Drew Smyly were the same. Awful. He went 3.2 innings, gave up 5 runs on 6 hits, 1 walk and 5 Ks. Smyly has a 7.59 ERA in 7 outings, 6 starts since June 14th. This can't keep happening, Dustin.
No, not if you're going to be any kind of a legitimate. I thought for sure that Hayden Wisniewski was going to be up. Instead of throwing the game in Iowa on Friday or Saturday, he would have thrown it up at Wrigley. And here's what I also don't get. Why would you start Fulmer if you're going to bring in Smyly? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, were you punishing Drew Smyly? I mean, is that what we're doing? I don't think you do that at the big league level. If you're going to punish him, then you don't play him. That's punishment. So I don't know. I mean, and there was no explanation. Zero explanation, because the Cubs end up winning this wild game, right? Other than to say that we'll let you know what we're going to do with Drew Smyly in the future. So it wasn't like some team wanted him, so you're keeping him out of the game so that he doesn't get hurt and ruin his trade value. This doesn't make any sense to me at all.
It was bizarre, to say the least. Maybe they thought that if he had a little more time to warm up, or I can't even figure out a reason it happened, but it happened. And not only that, here's another head scratcher for you, right? Smiley's pulled in the 6th with 2 outs after giving up a single to Lars Nootbaar. Who does David Ross call out of the bullpen? Rookie Daniel Palencia. So remember, Daniel Palencia He finished last season in single A, and then he went through double A and triple A this year, and he's up. But they put the kid in an extremely high leverage situation in a tie game in a critical series. He comes in, he throws a wild pitch to move Nootbaar to second, walk Goldschmidt, walk Gorman to load the bases, threw his second wild pitch of the inning to score Nootbaar, and that gave the Cardinals a 6-5 lead. But with runners on second and third and 2 outs, Palencia was able to get Nolan Arenado to ground out. Again, chewing my nails and sweating profusely was I.
Yeah, I can't believe that they left him in at that point, but they really were kind of towards the end of having guys left. A wild, wild game.
Now, the offense, Dustin, was the real hero of this game. In the last episode, we talked about how the core of Hoerner, Happ, and Suzuki had been struggling in the month of July. Happ struggling all year, Suzuki up and down, Hoerner just with a bad month of July, and that Swanson had been injured most of the month, and that was the core of this team. Well, Swanson came off the IL for this game, and Hoerner and Suzuki have been picking it up since the National Series. The Cubs offense overcame 4 different deficits. They were down 1-0, 3-1, 5-3, 6-5 to win this game. They scored 8 runs on 15 hits with the core of the team leading the way. Hoerner, 3 for 4. Happ, 2 for 3 with 2 walks. Bellinger, 2 for 5 with 4 RBIs. Suzuki, 3 for 5 with 2 RBIs. And Swanson in his first game back, 2 for 4 with an RBI. I think, Dustin, this was the offense Jed and Carter envisioned at the start of the season.
Well, you can see how important having both Cody Bellinger and Dansby Swanson in that lineup are. And it's about damn time Dansby Swanson was back in there. Sick and tired of seeing him on marquee taking ground balls and in the batting cage. You know, at least he should have been DHing. So I'm glad that he got back out there on Saturday in game 3 of this 4-game set, but they definitely need his bat in this lineup. There's no doubt about that. And that takes us to game 4, Crawly. We get to Sunday. Cubs have a chance to win the series and not split.
The Cubs record on Sunday is abysmal. Jameson Taillon, he's been doing better. And then Jordan Montgomery, who knows, but the Cubs win this one 7-2. We're going to talk about Cody Bellinger when we're done with this game right here, but there is not one hotter hitter in the planet right now than Cody Bellinger. He's ridiculous. Pitcher Jordan Montgomery in the first inning, Jordan Montgomery, the pitcher, couldn't cleanly field a grounder by Ian Happ that would have ended the inning. So he gets the air on that. Instead, he had to face Cody Bellinger, who proceeded to hit a 2-run homer. Dustin, why on God's green earth did the Cardinals not walk Bellinger in that situation with 2 outs and 1 on?
Great question. Unless they're just like, you know, our season is what it is. We're going to give this guy an opportunity to pitch against one of the hottest hitters in baseball.
Yeah, bad mistake on that one. The Cubs would score 5 more in the third with the bases loaded. Cody Bellinger hit a sac fly to make it 3-0. Dansby would single to make it 4-0. And the big blow came when Yan Gomes doubled to score 2 runs to give the Cubs a 6-0 lead. They would score 1 more on a Trey Mancini single to make it 7-0 after 3 innings. So the offense continues to stay hot. But to me, Dustin, how about Jameson Taillon? A nice start. You know, it's good to have that early run support. Let's put it that way. You know, you're up 2-0 after 1 inning, but Jama went 5.2 innings, gave up 1 run on 7 hits, 1 walk, and 6 Ks. To me, Dustin, another step forward.
Absolutely. That was a big effort. And you're right. I think having that 2-0 lead, you know, get staked to that. I think that changes the mindset. You're able to attack the strike zone a little bit more. And then they added a bunch more in the third. And he was settling in nicely. And
not only that, the Cubs offense gave manager David Ross a big enough lead. He's able to rest the regulars in the bullpen. When you're talking about Alzolay and you're talking about Merriweather and you're talking about Leiter and a lot of the guys that have been used a lot lately. And so it's Michael Rucker and Anthony Kay and Javier Assad who finished this one up. I think Assad's looked really good lately. Dylan Carlson did have an RBI single in the 6th and the 8th, but the Cubs would win this 7-2, taking 3 out of 4, which we said was necessary with this series. But that doesn't happen, Dustin, without Cody Bellinger. My God, if you take a look at Cody Bellinger in his last 10 games, 436 average, 1.324 OPS, 15 RBIs, and 5 homers. I mean,
that's pretty good.
Not bad. And when we talk about homers, most home runs since July 6th. Austin Riley's on the list. Giancarlo Stanton's on the list. Freddie Freeman and Manny Machado. But number 1, tied with Machado, is Cody Bellinger. And then how about this? OPS against left-handed pitchers. So Cody Bellinger's a lefty. You think that, that's going to be tough. He's in the top. He's with Freddie Freeman and Kyle Tucker and Shohei Ohtani. He has a higher OPS against left-handed batters than Shohei Ohtani this season, 1.067.
The man's going to get paid this offseason. That's all I know.
He's going to, if he continues like this, there's no doubt he's going to make a ton of money, Dustin. But, Bruce Levine, as we talked about, has kept saying he sees Stroman getting traded and the Cubs keeping Bellinger, trying to get in his good graces. And maybe he's the big free agent offseason signing for the Cubs.
Hopefully so. You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2, episode 55. Cubs club the Cardinals. There's not much better to say than that, other than sweeping the Cardinals, but they did club the Cardinals, that's for sure. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. In this segment, Crawly talks to Gabe Ramirez, diehard White Sox fan and radio host over at 670 The Score and B96, to talk about the Crosstown Classic.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, TV and 670 The Score radio host and lifelong White Sox fan, Gabe Ramirez. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. Just ready for this series and ready to be disappointed, probably more so than anything else.
Oh, man. So I got to ask you, you and I are roughly the same age. Do you feel that maybe because of interleague and all that stuff that the Cubs and White Sox matchup has the same intensity in the past, or do you think it's mellowed out a little bit some?
I think that when it's at its peak is when both teams are performing at a high level, right? And I think that when there's disinterest, it's because, the organizations themselves aren't putting the best product on the field. And so, it loses a little bit of the lure there. We understand that. I mean, we've seen days when, AJ's been punched in the face, right? And we've seen fights in the stands. But we've also seen games that are half empty because, people don't want to show up to see two bad teams. And it's unfortunate that that's where we're at right now.
Right. And I got to ask you, as someone who grew up in the area, do you think it's okay for someone to root for both teams, or do you feel pick a side, man? Where do you lie on that issue?
Yeah, I think it should depend on your age range, right? Like if you're 10 to 20, whatever your opinion, you're just arguing at the barbecue. No one's really paying attention to you. In your 20s, I think you should have a little bit of loyalty, pick your team, kind of figure out who it is that you like. But then once you get in your 30s and above, it's like you love who you love and you hope that the other side does well. You shouldn't hate the other side is what I'm saying. I don't like the fans, those are the ones that get on my nerves. The ones that hate the other side. I can't help but to say something. What kind of fan are you, Crawly?
I'm 100% here's what I tell people. I am diehard Cubs, and when it comes down to it, my loyalty is 100% Cubs. And when the White Sox won the World Series in 2005, I just didn't watch it. I just couldn't. It was too hard because, as an older guy, I still get ribbon from White Sox fans and I give it back. It was like, oh God. So I can't in good conscience root for the White Sox. I don't root against them. I don't root for them. That's kind of where I stand.
I'll tell you, when the Cubs won the World Series, I was sleeping, and the way I found out was the fireworks going off, right? So that just goes to show you my Soxdom versus my Cubdom and how much I care about the other team. I woke up and I was like, oh, damn, I guess the Cubs won the World Series. And I just went back to sleep.
That's funny you say that, because my neighbor, when the White Sox won in 2005, every game that they won in the World Series, he'd light off fireworks, and that waking me up. But it's, you know what, man, like I said, it's fun as long as, everyone doesn't take it too serious. I think that's the thing, is that we're going to be, we may have our own different rooting interests, but I've gone to Cubs Sox games with Sox fans. I was at the Cell when Michael Barrett punched AJ Pierzynski. So, I mean, I've gone both ways, and I'm hoping to go this next week coming up. So, I just love the fun of it. And I love that we have two teams and you can kind of draw sides as long as you just don't act like an idiot. You know what I mean?
That's a great point. That there's one thing we can not take for granted, and it is that we have two teams here, in Chicago. I always talk about the fact that, the year after Chris Bryant won the MVP, I still made it out to Wrigley because I wanted to watch, as a baseball fan, the best player, or who was deemed the best player in the majors. And so for me, it was a treat, even though he wasn't playing for the White Sox, to still have opportunities like that. Or whenever a player comes into town, obviously prior to this season that played in the other league. If you were a fan of theirs, but their team didn't come see your ball club, but once a year at that, you can go to the other side of town. So that was always fun.
Yeah, and so Gabe, for our Cub centric listeners right now, why don't you tell us, give us your kind of breakdown of the season so far for the 2023 Chicago White Sox?
Yeah, and for the Cubs fans that are out there, it's been tough growing up as a Sox fan. I'll be honest. My dad is a Cubs fan. My brother's a Cubs fan. I just grew up in the era of Robert Ventura, Frank Thomas, Ozzie Guillen, Blackjack McDowell. Those guys kind of defined my childhood, and so therefore I kind of like leaned in that direction when it came to them. But the Sox themselves, come on. I mean, it's just a continuation of last season, right? There was frustration for all of us as Sox fans, seeing what was going on, the underachieving that was happening from the ball club, and then the front office, right? Where, the assumption is you have guys in place that are trying to do what's best for the organization in terms of winning. And one of the most difficult things to do is admit failure at that level, right? Because you are getting paid the big bucks to make those decisions, whether it's Ryan Poles, Ryan Pace, or Jet or whoever it might be. And the Sox seem to be in that space right now where they've made mistakes and they can't seem to just admit that that's what they are and move on from them. They continue to try to live in this space of, we hope everyone can play at a high level at the same time. And what we realize as fans is that that's just not a reality. And so that's why you see the dip in attendance. That's why you see the low voting for Luis Robert Jr. But that's nothing new for Sox fans, right, Crawly? That's nothing new. I mean, Sox fans, if you're not performing well, they're just not going to show up because it's a smaller fan base, right? It is like a small market team in its circle of fan base that exists. And so if you're not performing well, they're not going to show up. And so we're waiting for a winner. We were promised one. We were promised at least the concept and the notion of a World Series winner or someone a team that can compete for that. And it's been so far from that, right? And so that's where fans are now, where there's that level of frustration where it's, give me anything new, because this season is just proving what we thought last year and what we were holding out hope that it wasn't this year. But the fact is, it is. And that is a team that isn't as good as we thought they were going to be. And that's it. And then there were mistakes made, and you got to give other people opportunities so we can cheer as fans, cheer for some new guys. Just cheer for anybody new. We'll cheer for them. Other than the guys that are here in order to get us going again.
Well, when you talk about mistakes being made, when I think about, so when obviously the White Sox were starting, they did their rebuild and the Cubs were winning and everything was great and you guys were losing and rebuilding. But right when that team looked like it was forming, I thought that one of the biggest mistakes in baseball that I can remember was when Jerry Reinsdorf gets involved and hires Tony La Russa. And while I thought that AJ Hinch was the one that was going to get the job, I remember a tweet coming out congratulating AJ Hinch and all this stuff. AJ Hinch, you know what he did with the Astros. And I felt that was a huge mistake, because I know the manager isn't going to determine this, that, or the other. But I always say, from a Cub fan standpoint, I don't think the Cubs win the 2016 World Series without Joe Maddon. And I feel like Tony La Russa, the game passed him by. I thought age was a factor. I mean, he's always going to be a good teacher and have a lot of knowledge. Not going to say he's like awful, but that wasn't the coach that you guys needed. And I think that really affected your window horribly.
Yeah, when you're looking at those 2016 Cubs, Crawly, it's clear that Maddon was the guy to get the best out of all of them, to get each one of them playing at a high level, regardless if it was some antics or pat on the backs, kicking the butts. That existed there. And I think that with this White Sox team, the assumption or the path forward was not who can get the best out of all of these gentlemen. It was, I have a guy who I think is really good, and this team is really good, so everything's going to be okay. And that was the mindset, as opposed to who can get the best out of these men that are playing on this team. And we saw what happened, right? From the very beginning, with the hiring him after the alcohol issue, and even from that moment, right? And then from the TA, you're right. It didn't feel right. And of course, people can look back now and be like, oh, well, it wasn't La Russa, it was the team. Well, yeah, it's a lot of things, right? It's never just one thing. It's always it's a number of things that have to happen. And it's just unfortunate that, that's what's going on right now with the team. But, Pedro Grifol, same thing. People assumed that he was going to come in and be that dude. And it's harder to get men that are settled in their ways and are comfortable to play at a high level, because you have to, what is the motivation, right? What's the motivation to get them to play at that high level? And it seems as though the White Sox, for whatever reason, have not been able to get that from each player on their team at the same time.
So is it fair to say that the temperature on the White Sox fan base on Pedro Grifol, is the jury out on him just yet, or what are the Sox fans' feelings right now?
No, I think there is it's blame to go around. And I think for a first-year manager, what he's dealing with, should he have won 6, 7 more games? Sure. But I don't think anyone expects him to be some 10-game over 500 coach and who's just mismanaging the team, right? And I think that's fair to say. No one thinks Pedro Grifol is mismanaging the White Sox. It's just, it's if you're looking at the pie chart of blame, right? I don't think he warrants a big slice of that. I think a lot of that goes to the players themselves.
Yeah, and when like I said, when the Cubs were kind of on their way down and they're selling everybody off, I was looking over at the south side of town. I'm looking at the core. You're looking like names like Lucas Giolito, Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, Carlos Rodon, Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, and Luis Robert. And I'm thinking to myself, these guys really have a chance to make a run. And now the talk is selling. And which guys would you say are most likely to be dealt here at the trade deadline?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that a lot of Sox fans have. And I think, you have to be team specific if you're trying to see who really wants to take away some of these guys, because, a lot of those names that are still on the roster, are there to be traded. A guy like Tim Anderson, no one wants to see him leave. Sox don't want to part ways with him. But if somebody really feels strongly about a Tim Anderson and will be willing to give up prospects and pitching prospects that are included as well, then they'd be willing to move on from pretty much anyone, like they've said, except for Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez. They've mentioned Dylan Cease, but, there are teams out there that, again, if Dylan Cease performs well next year, you're not going to re-sign him the year after that. So he's not going to be in your window. So why not just get something for him? Like, be just business savvy to get somebody for him now. So to me, I think if you can get a haul for Dylan Cease where you make a couple teams bid up the price for a guy like him, to me, that's what you do. Dangle him out there. Let him be the most precious gem that exists in the trade at the trade deadline. Leapfrog of Marcus Stroman. Be the best guy and have everybody just crabs in a barrel trying to get him. That to me would be the best idea. I think you keep Giolito. I know he'd probably perform well in another scenario, but we've seen a lot of guys go to the West Coast, to the Angels, and sorts, and not perform particularly well. And I would love Giolito to stick around to be, as a guy, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Crawly, like a Black Jack McDowell, right? Be the guy that a generation of fans can look to, like a Burley, that can say, hey, this is my guy. I rock with Giolito. He's someone that can at least bring the fan base out. Fans can cheer for him. He can go 500 and no one would care because he's still our guy. So I would like Giolito to stay in that space. And then, outside of that, you might get rid of a Kendall Graveman. You might, right? Reynaldo Lopez might get you some prospects back because he does want a different role on another team. So it'll be interesting, but there are things to be had. But for me, I think it should be Dylan Cease at the top of that list. I love Dylan Cease, but he can get you back the most at this very moment when there are teams very closely to each other in the playoff race, and they can separate themselves with a guy like Dylan Cease if they're willing to give up some top tier prospects in their farm.
Now, we mentioned a couple times Tim Anderson. You mentioned, with him and Tony La Russa and the struggles he's gone through. It's almost been like a soap opera this year. And I remember when, everyone was saying, what, this Tim Anderson guy is better than Javi Baez on the north side of town. What do you think that what's going on in the field, his performance this season, do you think it's a combination, I'm sure, of things, but why do you think he's struggling to get back to that all-star level?
Yeah, I think first you have to commend Tim Anderson for reaching a level that no one thought he could reach. Having a batting title, Silver Slugger, being a guy that can consistently hit over 300. I mean, that is, unheard of in baseball to do it at that consistent rate. And so the pressure he put on himself, you have to look at him and say, hey man, you did this, right? You put this pressure to be this guy that you can carry a team like he can the White Sox, be that guy at the one slot, improve your defense. And yeah, I think that what ends up happening is that, you just can't do it year in and year out for a decade straight, be batting 330. It's just hard. Baseball's a difficult sport. And we all have lives, and our lives are not the same every single year. They are different, and we're faced with new tasks and new challenges in our personal lives, and that could be a myriad of things. And so, could that be something that's happening? Sure, but I think it's just mere statistics, and over the course of a decade, you're gonna have a bad season or two, and I'm hoping that this is just one of them. Because I've got to be honest, I would love TA to stick around, but Crawly, you heard look at Stroman, how he comes out. Man, I want to be on this team. I love this ballpark. I want to be here. You want Stroman to be there no matter what, just because of what he's saying. I would if I was a Cubs fan, because that's what I would want TA to be saying. I don't want him to be caught up in some drama of lip reading as to whether or not he said he wanted to be here. No, come out. You know what? The organization is rough. Yeah, we're the lovable losers, but you know what? I love it here, and I want to build a winner because this is the team. Like, you would love for him to say something like that. So I love TA, the player. I have his clothing line. I rock with TA, but at the same time, it's like, he just maybe he's the guy that needs a new change of scenery, I would think, out of anybody.
It's interesting because when you talked about Dylan Cease, you said they're not going to sign him after his contract's up. And here's the thing. Jerry Reinsdorf has owned the team for a long time, and I've seen signs, and I don't know, I think there was a billboard or something, sell the team. And I've seen that more this year than I can ever remember. Do you think that when Jerry Reinsdorf, he's getting up there in age, but when that team gets sold, do you think that's going to reinvigorate the fan base?
I mean, how long is that going to be, right, before that happens? I mean, let's be honest, right?
Good question.
Because probably he's a Chicago guy like us, right? Like, now he is, right? And his mindset isn't, oh, I'm going to crumble to the pressure of the fan. That's not what Chicagoans do. That's not what the White Sox do. He's not going to be like, okay, fine, you guys hate me, I'm going to sell the team. No, he's fine where he's at. He still thinks he can put out a winner, if he hires the right people. So I just think that's so far out from the present, right? I think what would be cool is if Jerry does, one of my bosses in life told me when they were making changes and I questioned it, and he said, hey, Gabe, you know what? Sometimes you just need a fresh coat of paint, right? It's not about making the room look nicer or rearranging the furniture. He's like, sometimes you just need a fresh coat of paint. And I get it. And I think that I would hope that one day soon, Reinsdorf just says, hey, you know what? Maybe we do need to just like wipe everything clean and just, new people, new faces, new everything. And I think that would reinvigorate the fan base if something like that happened.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be the Jerry Reinsdorf way. And he is getting up there in age. I don't want to wish anybody anything, but that's the thing I just wonder about is when he passes, if all of a sudden, then all of this, because I think people are frustrated with we're going to keep Kenny Williams around doing God knows what for how long. And some, like you said, just basically keeping the same guys around and doesn't seem to be any consequences for anybody.
Yeah, I think that, you would want that. But, I think about this, Crawly. Let's say your pops owned the Bulls and you were running it, right? You're loving it, right? But your pops also owned the White Sox and you were kind of hands off there. But then let's say something does happen to your pops. You're not just going to let the White Sox go away. You're going to, or sell it off, right? You're not going to do that. You're going to go ahead and be full-fledged, involved in both of them. As a human, that's what I would think. I mean, especially Michael Reinsdorf, I know him to be a really great guy, very business savvy. So I can imagine he would want to take on the challenge of turning his White Sox into a winner after that. I'm just saying, we're having a regular conversation, right? That's
right.
If it was me and my pops had that business, I would want to take it over and turn it into a winner.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Michael can do that because I mean, I just remember the turnover when you had Dollar Bill Wirtz with the Blackhawks, and then all of a sudden Rocky took over, and all of a sudden it just seemed like there was a change, and I wonder how much that would really reinvigorate the fan base, but. As we sit here coming in this weekend, again, the White Sox just got swept by the Twins. That had to have been tough, and 19 games under 500. So maybe the Cubs are catching them at the right time. You got Michael Kopech going one game and Lance Lynn going the other. What can you tell us about those two pitchers?
Yeah, I'll tell you is that you're just not sure what you're going to get. Kopech had a decent outing last time out, but the time before that was rough. Again, it's just a topsy-turvy season that he's had over actually the last 18 months, you would say. So he could mow you guys down. He can throw the fastball hard. If the slider's working, he's going to be doing well. And if the changeup can get over the plate for a strike, then guys going to be in for a tough night. But that's if he can find it. If he's out of the strike zone up high with his fastball, I mean, you guys are, a patient team, so it could, it could be tough because if some of your guys are sitting dead red and Kopech has to go, a heater down the middle because he's behind, guys like Hap, Wisdom, Saya, I mean, they're going to make him pay. And of course, Cody Bellinger as well. Lance Lynn, I think he is a guy that, he'll get up for a game like this. He's looking for something have him get up. And this could be one of those games. And also, I think he's a thinking pitcher. So I think he'll do a little bit better than Kopech. But again, Crawly, you just don't know, right? That's the reality of it. Kopech could go 2 innings. He could go 6. Lance Lynn could go 7 innings and give up 5. You really have no idea. But you know that they're going to battle. That's what you do know. You're going to get a scrappy back end of the White Sox team with Remillard and, Zavala's always going to play hard. That's 7, 8, 9 slot. They're always going to battle. And then if the top of the order can perform at a high level with Benintendi and Tim Anderson, then I feel like the middle of the lineup comes through when they see guys on base.
Well, Gabe, we always make our predictions at the end of the show. And so Dustin and I'm going to let you have a chance here to make your prediction. You got a 2-game series at the Cell. Well, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, 2-game series at the Cell. I'm going to say first game, Sox win like 7-6. I think Kopech, keeps it down. Bullpen gives it up late, 7-6. And then I think the second game, who's pitching for the Cubs the second game?
The second game for the Cubs is going to be Marcus Stroman versus Lance Lynn. There should be a lot of scouts in attendance, Gabe.
Yeah, as I'm sure there are. Who's pitching against Kopech? Tell me, Crawly, while I'm saying this little thing here about Lance Lynn. So,
Kyle Hendricks is going against Michael Kopech.
Ooh, okay. I take that back. It's going to be 5-3 White Sox because it's going to be a lower scoring game. 5-3. Kyle Hendricks has been pitching so. Oh my gosh, I've loved watching Kyle Hendricks pitch since he's came back. It's just fun to. I love pitchers like that. So you guys are lucky to have a guy like Kyle Hendricks. But that'll be a great matchup. 5-3, or yeah. It could go either way. 5-3 on the first game. The second game, Lance Lynn, Stroman. Stroman didn't pitch well last time out. What happened there?
It's a good question. He struggled ever since coming back from London. So that's where we talk about the inconsistency here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So if he's pissed that he's about to get traded and he's not getting what he wants, and he throws anything 2 miles per hour slower to Eloy or Luis Robert, Sox could win that one too. So maybe that's one of those games that gets out of hand. Maybe it's like an 8-2 White Sox.
Oh, all right. Now you know how Eloy loves to perform against the Cubs.
That's what I'm saying.
Gabe, do me a favor. Tell her, and I want to make sure our listeners understand this. Gabe Ramirez is not just a White Sox guy. He covers all the sports, the Bears, Bulls, Hawks, everybody, White Sox, Cubs. When can our listeners listen to your radio show?
Yeah, every night, 6 p.m. on 670 The Score, talking all Chicago sports, Cubs included, obviously, 670 the home of Chicago Cubs baseball. And Bear season's coming up. So Bears Unleashed Friday and Saturday nights on Fox 32. And then you can catch me on the post game after the Bears on Fox as well. Luke Canellis, Ann Herron, Jim Miller, and myself and Corey Wooten on the post game after the Bears. So
that's the best post game, man. And I got to tell you, and where can they find you on the socials?
Oh, at Chicago_Gabe, Gabe. Follow me, man. I follow you back.
All right, Gabe, I appreciate you so much for jumping on and talking White Sox with us. I wish you the best of luck after Wednesday's game with the rest of your season. Thanks for jumping on, Gabe.
I like it. Thank you.
This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2. It's episode 55. The Cubs club the Cardinals. Crawly, great job there with Gabe. Looking forward to that series Tuesday and Wednesday. But let's the Cubs get a day off today, Monday. Let's see what the standings look like as we have a day off.
Yep, the standings. It's a never-ending roller coaster with the Cubs, right? Just when you finally get out, they pull you back in. Milwaukee right now at 55-45, they're hot right now. They've won 7 of their last 10, but they lost their last game. Right behind them is Cincinnati, who has gotten hot again. They're winners of 5 straight, and they are half a game behind Milwaukee, and they face each other this week. So a great chance for the Cubs to keep kind of making up some ground. The Cubs are now 3 games out of 500, 48-51. They're 6.5 back, 6-4 in their last 10 with that 3-game winning streak. Cardinals go in the other direction. They were hot coming in, but the Cubs give them 3 straight losses, and now they are 11 games back. And so Pittsburgh is also 11 games back, 3-7 in their last 10. So they are fading and fading fast.
Yeah, the Cubs are in the mix. There's no doubt about that. Luckily, the division is not very good. All right, a little bit of news. The Cubs so far have signed 19 to 20 picks from the 2023 draft. Only second-round pick, Jackson Wiggins, is the lone unsigned player. What news can you tell us about that, Crawly?
Nothing yet, but when you got 19 out of 20, that's good. But Jackson Wiggins, right-handed pitcher out of Arkansas, he was the guy that the Cubs got as the pick for not re-signing Wilson Contreras. They get a compensatory pick. So this is a guy you want to see get signed. It's always going to be a matter of money, and we'll see what happens. But I'm hoping that they get this done, and by the time we talk next time, the Cubs have signed all 20 of their draft picks.
Absolutely. All right. A guy that went into the Hall of Fame this weekend, you know him well, I know him well. That was Pat Hughes. He received the Ford Frick Award on Saturday out in Cooperstown.
Let me just tip of the hat to 670, The Score. If you haven't listened to Pat's call to the Hall, the special that The Score aired on Friday night and repeated on Saturday, you can find it. I Googled it. I couldn't find it on the Audacy app real well, but I Googled it, and it led me to a link that opened up the Audacy app. But that was a great job. That tip of the hat to Ron Coomer, who we had on last episode, Zach Zaidman. They had so many awesome guests. And Chris Tannehill, you know what a wizard that guy is. Just a great job. And, you know, there was a lot of great, if you follow Mitch Rosen or you follow Zach Zaidman or any of these guys on Twitter, they had a lot of great pictures. And I got a feeling you and I both knew that Pat Hughes was going to hit this speech out of the park, right?
Yeah, he did a very nice job. Got to watch it off the marquee. Thanks to them for that. So, yeah, real nice special moment. I just wish that that part of the awards was included on Sunday with the players that go in. I understand it's separate, but I don't understand why it's that separate.
Bob Costas talked about it in the Call to the Hall show. He said that there was problems before where all of a sudden it got to be very long on Sunday. So in Cooperstown, it's a lot on Sundays when the players usually go in. They changed it a few years back. I want to say like 2018. So that way it didn't get too long. So if you had 3 or 4 players and then had 2 or 3 of people who make it the Buck O'Neill Award recipient, you got the writer, you got the broadcaster. Now you're getting to have a real long day on Sunday. So that's why they did that. But with Pat Hughes, I took a little clip out of this right here because I think as Cub fans, obviously Pat talked about his past, his family, how he got into broadcasting, his different partners, but he saved the end for Cub fans. And I just wanted to play this just because clearly just Pat Hughes is just a phenomenal guy, and I want Cub fans to hear this.
And in closing, I have a note to Cubs fans. If I was writing you a letter, it might read, "What an extraordinary group of people you are." I want to thank you so much for your unbelievable passion for the ball club and your support of me. When I got the call from Cooperstown last December, I truly think there were some Cub fans who were just as happy as I was with the news. You make me feel like I am a part of your family. You invite me to special events like graduations, bar mitzvahs, and birthdays. And I absolutely love those games at Wrigley Field, those close ball games where you fans are not just part of the ballpark atmosphere, you become part of the ball game itself, and you play a significant role in a dramatic Cubs victory. That happens 4 to 5 times minimum every single season. As a broadcaster, I feed off of your energy. Let me just say, it has been my extreme privilege to be one of your announcers for these past 3 decades. And before my career ends, I hope I get at least one more chance to say something like, "The Chicago Cubs win the World Series." Thank you.
I'm not going to lie. I'm tearing up a little bit right now. I've gotten to know Pat. I've gotten to talk with him. I've interviewed him on this podcast. I've worked with him. We had a T-shirt thing we were working on for a little bit. I know the guys at Autograph One that do signings with him. I've been there. He's been the soundtrack of my life when it comes to Cubs baseball. I can't say that this was deserving enough and so appreciative of what Pat has done for Cub fans all these years. And to hear him acknowledge us just the way that he did, that's just him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he totally gets it. I'm lucky enough to call him a teammate to a certain extent. I've dealt with him a little bit, not as much as you, but like you, have been listening on the radio long before I started working at the Score. And hopefully, as he ended that, he does have that opportunity to say the Cubs win the World Series once again. So kudos to Pat Hughes. Kudos to everybody over at 670 The Score. It was a special, special moment. And how about this? Also special, Dansby Swanson back in action on Saturday off the IL. They optioned Jarrett Young back out to Iowa.
Yeah. Jared Young back in Iowa. I didn't see him, but I did see Nick Madrigal play when I was in Iowa. He played on Saturday. He went 2 for 3, but he was scratched from his start on Sunday with lower body fatigue. But he looked really good in Iowa. So he looks, hopefully the legs get under him a little bit and he'll be okay. You remember Brad Boxberger? He will begin throwing bullpen sessions. So he's progressing. He's going to start that today on Monday. And Brandon Hughes, the lefty, has started playing catch. So we'll kind of keep an eye on those guys.
All right, here we go, Crawly. We got the Cubs Sox, the first 2 of 4 games. I don't like how it's set up now. I don't like 2 games in the middle of the week. It should be 1 3-game series over the weekend at the other person's ballpark every other year. That's how you could make it special. This is not special. Now it's just another 4 games and 2 games in the middle of the week. Can't stand it.
Right. I'm not really a big fan. I like your idea. Last season, the White Sox underachieved again. They went 81-81, finishing 11 games behind the first place Guardians and missed the playoffs again. Tony La Russa at age 78 stepped down as manager when the season ended due to health issues that kept him out of the dugout most of August and September. They made some additions in the offseason. They added Andrew Benintendi, who's been having a pretty decent year in left field. They also signed Mike Clevenger. That was a whole awful saga with accusations of spousal abuse and child abuse, and it was a mess. They did have some key losses. Obviously, Jose Abreu, who was the cornerstone of the White Sox for many, many years. Johnny Cueto, who had a great surprise season for them last year. A.J. Pollock is gone. Vince Velasquez, Josh Harrison, Danny Mendick, and Adam Engel. So the biggest offseason move, again, they hired Pedro Grifol, former bench coach for KC, as their new manager. That being said, Dustin, the White Sox once again underachievers, and it looks like they will be sellers at the deadline. They're currently in 4th place with a record of 41-60. They're 19 games under 500, 12 games behind the Twins in the AL Central. So, I mean, for White Sox
fans, the
fans,
fact that they went up to Minnesota, Crawly, they had an opportunity to maybe change some things around. They needed a sweep, and not only didn't they get a win, they were swept this weekend up in Minnesota, losers of 7 of the last 10.
Yeah, just
it's got to be really tough to be a White Sox fan right now because they had this window. And they've done nothing with it, and this window is about to be shut solid.
Well, again, the thing I tell people is that when the Cubs were playing Game 7 of the World Series, before the game, I told myself, these truly are the 2 best teams. They deserve to be here. And no matter who wins tonight, I expect both teams to return to the World Series. And that was my mentality. And all of a sudden, Dustin, we should know better as Cub fans. You see how hard it is, and you see how quick that window closes. And the White Sox built a really good core with Rick Hahn. Jerry Reinsdorf put his nose in where it didn't belong, hired Tony La Russa over A.J. Hinch, and I think that's going to be – people are going to look back at that in White Sox history as one of the biggest blunders of all time. That, to me, is their equivalent of Brock Fabroglio as far as a decision that affected the future of their organization.
Yeah. All right. Enough about the White Sox. Let's talk about the Cubs versus the White Sox. Game 1, Tuesday night, Kyle Hendricks versus Michael Kopech. This is an interesting matchup. 2 very different styles of pitchers.
Yeah, Dustin. And what do you think, man? There's probably going to be a ton of scouts in attendance with both of these teams possibly being sellers. You know, the Cubs looking like they're still trying to fight to keep it going, and the White Sox not so much. So I anticipate that there's a good portion of that crowd's going to be scouts looking at all, you know, a lot of these guys like Kyle Hendricks or Lucas Giolito that may be traded. Kyle Hendricks 3-4 with a 3.38 ERA. His last start against Washington, he went 6 innings, gave up 5 hits and 1 earned run. That was his last start against Boston. That was the one he struggled, 4.2, 8 hits, 5 earned runs. And he also struggled a little bit against the Yankees. So, you know, obviously Boston and the Yankees are a much, much better team than the Chicago White Sox. Not
even close. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, you know, and the wind was really bad that night that we watched. I was there against Boston when the Red Sox were in town. So, I mean, I kind of just put that in the back of my head as well, that it was, you know, Kyle Hendricks is definitely not a guy that's going to benefit from wind blowing out. But when we talk about Michael Kopech, he's a guy that's kind of really had an up and down season. One of those disappointments for the Sox this year. You know, you thought that maybe he's going to break out. He's 4-8 with a 4.29. His last start against the Mets, he did really well, 4.2 innings, gave up 2 hits, 1 earned run. Against Atlanta, he got the loss. He only went 0.2 innings. He gave up 4 earned runs. And against the Angels, he went 4 innings, gave up 4 hits, 2 earned runs, but 7 walks. If you look at his last 3 starts, against the Mets, he has 4 walks. Against the Atlanta, he has 4 walks. And against the Angels, he has 7 walks. This is a guy that is going to give you some free passes. You have to be willing to take them.
Yeah, you got to have smart approach, no doubt about that. You got to go up there knowing that. I'm sure they're going to pass along those stats to the Cubs lineup that night.
Right. Now in game 2, Dustin, 2 guys again that are on the block. So all 4
pitchers.
This
is where it gets interesting, right, Crawly? Like, I expect Marcus Stroman to make this start. I wonder if Lance Lynn makes this start.
Again, both guys, both coveted right now. And again, Lance Lynn could be gone. You're right. As far as Stroman is concerned, we talked a little bit earlier about Stroman's struggles. You know, he took the loss against St. Louis, only went 3.2 innings, gave up 4 earned runs. You know, errors are going to happen, but that doesn't excuse 4 walks, Dustin. And that also really hurt him.
Yeah, that number's got to come down. There's no doubt about that.
Against Boston, he had his best start in a while. He went 6 innings pitched, gave up 1 earned run and 3 hits, and he only had 1 walk in that game. But before that, against Milwaukee, 5 innings, he gave up 4 runs. He also had 4 walks. So in 2 of his last 3 starts, he's walked 4 or more batters.
Got to fix it. Can't have it. It's not the recipe for success at all. So that's on him. That he can't blame the bad third baseman or the shortstop that's, you know, an all-star second baseman who's filling in. You know, stop it. You know, get your head right, hit the ball over the plate, and don't blame anybody but yourself.
All right. Well, we got Lance Lynn on the other side with a 6-9 with a 6.19 ERA. Right now against Minnesota was his last start. He went 6.2 innings, gave up 6 earned runs on 8 hits. Against Atlanta, he gave up 4 earned runs on 6 hits, going only 5.1 innings. He had a good start against Toronto, went 7 innings, gave up 1 hit and 0 earned run. Thing about Lance Lynn, he gives up the long ball. So hopefully the Cubs offense remains hot and they can make him pay if he makes those mistakes, which he has been prone to do.
I know they don't turn on the fireworks when the opposing team hits home runs over there at 35th and Shields, but hopefully they'll, on the Cubs bench, they'll do some type of little fireworks show for all the long balls that Lance Lynn hopefully will be giving up. All right, Crawly, hot and not. Let's go.
All righty. Is there anyone in the world hotter than Cody Bellinger? No. He's 11 for his last 24, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs. In the last 7 days, he's slashing 458, 462, 792. Out of this world. And right behind him, Seiya Suzuki, 10 for his last 26 with a home run and 5 RBIs. He's slashing 385, 429, 538. So both of those guys looking really, really hot.
Yeah, about time, Seiya Suzuki. That's good. And the Dansby Swanson looked okay over the weekend. Ian Happ looked okay over the weekend. So you're seeing a little bit of the core getting together at the same time. Now, on the not side, your first guy, Trey Mancini.
2 for his last 13, no home runs, 1 RBI. He had that single to drive it in, slashing 154, 308. And Christopher Morel's in one of his slumps, 2 for his last 13, 0 home runs, 2 RBIs. And he's slashing 154, 353, 154.
The one thing Trey Mancini does tend to do, though, it seems like he hits with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, he does.
So at least there's that. So hopefully there's an opportunity for him to do that on Tuesday and Wednesday over at 35th and Shields. And the hot Crawly for the White Sox is Eloy Jimenez and Tim Anderson.
Of course, Eloy Jimenez, because we got to have that stupid "Thanks Cubs" tweet that's going to come out when he invariably hits a home run. He's 7 for his last 16, 1 home run, 2 RBI, slashing 438, 471, 68 in his last 7 days. And Tim Anderson, who's had a very down season, has gotten hot in the right time. He might be good trade bait right there. 10 for his last 25 with 3 RBIs. He's slashing 400 and 464, 480.
On the not side, we've got the all-star for the White Sox, Luis Robert Jr.
Ooh, maybe a little bit of that home run derby letdown. 5 for his last 27, 1 home run, 1 RBI. Get this, Dustin. He has 0 walks and 13 strikeouts in his last 7 games. He's slashing 185, 185, 333. Also on the knot, you're taking a look at Jake Berger. He's 3 for his last 24 with 0 home runs, 3 RBIs, slashing 125, 192, 208.
Yeah, and then Jake Berger was doing pretty well out in New York against the Yankees. The power was there, but hopefully the power won't be there. It'll be a little power outage, if you will, at 35th and Shields.
Absolutely.
All right, Crawly, prediction time. 2 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, 35th and Shields the place. The Cubs have a couple of their best pitchers, if not their, 2 out of the top 3 pitchers, Hendricks and Stroman going. I'll let you go first.
I hate even game series, 2 games or 4 games. The White Sox are on the ground. They're done. They know it. The Cubs feel like they have a chance. There's nothing the White Sox would want to do more than spoil the Cubs party, but I'm going to keep it positive and say the Cubs take both of them.
I am too. You're exactly right, but they got to go in there that first game, put that the old proverbial foot on the throat. All right, that's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow the socials, Fly the W on Facebook and Instagram. You can email us, flythew670gmail.com. And Crawly, you know it, but you can watch us now on YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel.
Hey, Cub fans, let's head down to U.S. Cellular. Let's go to the South Side, take over their park, cheer on the Cubs, push them through. We can all be cheering. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!